Alright, so today is pretty much the very end of the ball python breeding season. I just have a few more hatchlings in my incubator. I'm going to pull those out and set them up in my hatchling rack. And that is pretty much it for the year. I actually had about 100 ball python hatchlings, and it's kind of a bittersweet time of the year, I'd say. It's almost like Christmas Day and you're on your very last present, and you know, after you open that present, you're thinking about taking down the Christmas tree, which is kind of a bummer, but at least we still have one present, one box of ball python hatchlings that we can take a look at. In just a couple days, I actually cut them open and peeked inside, and we saw the results of the pairing, but we didn't really get a good look at the entire snake completely out of the egg. And I just peeked in my incubator just a little bit ago, and it looks like every single snake is completely out of the egg, which is pretty cool. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull those snakes out of the incubator, and we're gonna take a closer look at each one, and then we'll give each one a name. I actually have some names in a jar. I name all my hatchlings as I set them up in the rack, and then we'll set them up in the hatchling rack. So let's take a look at some baby snakes. Alright, here it is. This is my very last box of ball python eggs. This is actually my Pastel Pinstripe, which is a lemon blast, crossed with my Pastel Desert Ghost male. So the Desert Ghost was actually a visual, so everything will be 100% het for Desert Ghost, which is pretty cool. So let's take a look at what Santa Claus brought us for hatchlings. Wow, take a look at all these. That is amazing. The first thing that really strikes me is these are some really beefy hatchlings. They're really nice and thick. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually take some of these eggshells out of here. Wow, this is crazy. Look at all these snakes. That is amazing. There's nothing like a whole pile of nice hatchlings from Santa Claus. That's pretty cool. So let's take a quick look. You know, pretty much the crown jewel, I'm not sure if I hit it or not, it was the Super Pastel Pinstripe 100% Het Desert Ghost. And I'm just kind of looking really quick here, and I'm not really seeing it. Let's see. Look at this big old clump of snakes. They're all wrapped together. That is pretty crazy. Take a look at this. Well, this one actually, I'm thinking, well, I'm not sure on this one. This almost looks like it could be. No, I'd say, well, I'd say it's hard to say on this one because the light head's kind of throwing me off, but this just looks like a lemon blast to me. It doesn't look like we hit the crown jewel on this one. As a matter of fact, I did hit the Super Pastel Pinstripe and 100% Het Desert Ghost on another clutch, so you can actually take a look at that one. So I'm pretty sure this one is just a lemon blast, which is a Pastel Pinstripe. Looks like we have a Pinstripe, which is very nice. It looks like we have a Pastel, which is really nice. Nice Pastel. This kind of looks like our only normal out of the whole clutch, which is pretty interesting. Wait a minute. This one, well, let's see. These are pretty close. I don't know if this is a normal or a pastel. I'm thinking this one might be a normal. This one looks like a pastel, because usually the pastel has more of a broken up pattern. And it's hard to tell on this. This one's hard to tell because the head is a little bit lighter on this one. I would say this is a pastel. I think it's just a low expression pastel, not quite as bright. You can definitely see the difference in the highlights, and I'm going to call that a pastel. And usually once they shed, you can definitely tell which one's which. This one looks like this is definitely a super pastel. Take a look at this one. That is pretty awesome. So the Super Pastel has 2 copies of the pastel. Anything you breed this with will be a pastel, which is pretty interesting. And then this one looks like a pastel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pull these out one by one and take a closer look at them and get them ready for the hatchling rack. Alright, so I have just a few names here, some snake names that we can use. And what I want to do is I'm just going to pull these out one by one. And let's start probably with my favorite morph. This is a Pinstripe. I absolutely love the Pinstripes. This is a Pinstripe 100% Het Desert Ghost. And if you look at pretty much if you look at any of these, there's really no markers to tell if it's heterozygous for Desert Ghost. Desert Ghost is a recessive mutation, and you need 2 copies of the gene to actually get a visual. So just 1 copy of the gene, you wouldn't be able to tell if this is Het Desert Ghost or not. It's just essentially just a straight Pinstripe as far as the appearance goes. So let's take a look, and we'll name this one. This one, oh, this is kind of interesting. It's a gold snake, and look at this name. This is perfect. This is Goldie. That is the perfect name for a gold snake. I'm glad I actually didn't have Goldie as a name for the yellow snake, which is kind of interesting. So I wanted to show you my setup for my hatchling rack. Now this is what I use. I use an ARS hatchling rack. This is an ARS 1065 tub, and it also fits the 1039, any of the 10 series hatchling racks from ARS. And what I use is a coconut husk. I actually just mixed up a fresh block of coconut husk, and then I put the water in this little tiny Dixie cup here, these little disposable ones, and they just slide right in. And then there's a little heat panel that goes along the back that's a 90-degree hot spot that they sit on. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a label for this guy, and I use this label maker here, and we'll make a label for him, and then I'll set him up in the hatchling rack. Alright, so here's the label for that one. This is Goldie, which is a Pinstripe 100% Het Desert Ghost. And on these stickers, I changed them a little bit from last year. So last year, what I was doing is I was peeling off the back. You can see it just kind of peels off in two, and it's sticky on the back. And I was actually using a magnetic strip on these and putting them on the hatchling rack. The problem is if I'm moving around the racks and these actually fall off, the problem is this year I'm doing a lot of hets. I have Het Desert Ghost, Het Pieds, Het Albinos, and Het Clowns. Some of them are triple hets, really expensive, and you really can't tell one from the other just by looking at it. So in this year, since I have so many hets, I'm just taking the sticker and I'm sticking it right on the rack without the magnet, so I don't risk actually knocking that magnet off and mixing up my snakes. Let me tell you, you definitely don't want to mix up your hets because you can't really tell just by looking at them which one is which. Alright, so let's pull one more snake out of here and take a look at it and see if we can figure out what these are. Sometimes it's a challenge. I think this time it's pretty easy figuring out which is which. And I would say this one is definitely a pastel. You can definitely tell the pattern's jumbled up just a little bit. It has a little bit more yellow. The head's a little bit faded. It's not faded enough to where you would think it would be actually a super pastel. I think this is just a straight pastel. So let's take a name for this one out of the jar. This one's named Chip. Alright, so I actually pulled the Super Blast 100% Het Desert Ghost out of my hatchling rack. This is actually the snake from a previous clutch. This is pretty much the crown jewel where it has 2 copies of the pastel and the Pinstripe 100% Het Desert Ghost. And if you compare this one to this one, you definitely can tell that there is a difference between them. You can tell this one is, it's always good to actually compare one next to the other. You can definitely tell this one is just, it's just a pastel Pinstripe. This is a super pastel Pinstripe. It's always good to have a reference. Sometimes we can just kind of set them side by side to figure out what you have in your clutch. Alright, so this is the one we're going to give a name and set up in the hatchling rack. This is a pastel Pinstripe 100% Het Desert Ghost, also known as a Lemon Blast. Really good snake. Actually, I have 4 of these as breeder females, and they produce some really awesome babies. As a matter of fact, with a 2-gene animal, and you add more genes on top of it, you can get quite a few combos from a snake like that. As a matter of fact, this came from a Lemon Blast. This one's name is Spot. Alright, let's pull out another snake out of this box of snakes. Let's take a look at this. This is, to me, this looks like just a straight normal ball python, 100% het desert ghost. And the normals, I'd say, pretty much the cheapest snake that I sell is a normal. The het desert ghost is, you know, bring the price up a little bit. I'm not exactly sure on the prices. These will actually be for sale at the Denver Repticon coming up the October 19th and 20th, 2019 here in Denver. It'll be pretty cool. I'll actually have a whole table there Saturday and Sunday with probably about 60 ball python hatchlings for sale. I'm going to sell them there first, and then if they don't sell at the show, I'll list them on Morph Market. This will actually be the first time I'm actually listing them on Morph Market. So I just wanted to take a look at the belly on this one. Sometimes you can see het pied tracks if it's het pied. And I was wondering if you could kind of see the same kind of tracks with a het desert ghost. And sometimes these can kind of fool you, these little lines. So essentially the belly is completely clear on a regular snake. And then with the het pied, you have these little lines of black on the left and the right of the belly coming down. This almost looks like it could be a really low expression het pied. And I can tell you, this is definitely not het pied. This is just my desert ghost crossed with, at least I don't know it's het pied. As a matter of fact, there's actually a really slim chance that any snake could be het for something, because you never really know until you prove it out. So it'd be interesting to see if I actually got a really strong het pied. You can really only see it on the normals, but if I actually got a really strong het pied and thought that actually desert ghost was het pied, I could breed it back to another het pied and then see if I could get any visuals, which would be kind of neat. Or I could breed it back to, well, I don't have any visual pied females that are big enough. But here is the name for this one. This is Helios. Alright, so I only have two more snakes left. One is actually a pastel. The other one looks like a super pastel. And I'd say if you're not really familiar with ball python morphs, you can kind of be tricked into looking at one versus the other. I'd say it's really close in the colors. The one thing that really gives it away is the lightness of the head. You can see the super pastel definitely has a lighter head than the straight pastel. This guy's kind of freaking out. But if you can see the heads kind of side by side, the super pastel definitely has a lighter head, and you can see it has a busier pattern than the regular pastel. It's a little bit lighter. Usually pastels have a little bit lighter yellow than a regular pastel. It's really close, I'd say. If you're not used to the pastels and the super pastels, it's a really close comparison between the two. Sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference unless you've hatched quite a few out. But if you look at the super pastel, you can definitely tell this one is lighter and a little bit busier of a pattern with a lighter head. You can definitely tell that this one is a super pastel. So let me see if I can keep this one in the container here, and we'll give a name to this super pastel. So the interesting thing is, if you're looking at the het pied markers, you really only see it on a normal wild type classic ball python. You really don't see the het pied markers on any other snake. You can see on this one, there's definitely no tracks at all down the belly. Just has a really clear belly. So let's get a name for this one. This one, this is a really sci-fi name. This one's named Spock. Alright, so here is the very last ball python hatchling of the year. This is it. I have nothing else in the incubator. This is, take a look at this. This is a beautiful pastel. And the pastels, I'd say, sometimes they can kind of trick you. Sometimes the normals can look really yellow, really pastel-like, and sometimes it takes kind of a trained eye to see the pastel. Pretty much it has a yellower color than a regular normal. Usually it doesn't have the alien heads along the side, so you really don't see any of the alien heads, which this one doesn't have any at all, really. It is a really good looking snake, and sometimes the pastels can be super bright, and sometimes they can be a little muddied out depending on the line of the pastel. This is a really good looking snake. Take a look at the belly on this one. Pretty clear belly. So let's give this one a name out of the jar. So it just had a few names left. We'll save those for next year. This one is named Fluffy. All right, so here are my hatchlings in the hatchling rack. I actually have 35 over here, and I actually sold about 20 to 25 hatchlings this spring, which kind of, actually if I would have kept them, I could have actually almost filled up this rack completely. And then I have some of my mice and my rats over here, some of my breeders, and then over here I have all my hatchlings. Essentially the stuff at the top is the stuff that I hatched out early on, and they get younger and younger as you go down. This is actually another 39 hatchlings. So it looks like I'll have about 74 hatchlings for sale, which would be pretty cool. And then over here I have all some of my males and some of my females, and I have some my super dwarf retic on the bottom. And then essentially what I do is I just fill up a whole tub full of this coconut husk bedding. I actually just expanded one block, and this is where I use all my extra coconut husk to fill all my tubs and kind of swap it out. And it's pretty much that time where I have to go through and start replacing all the coconut husks in all these tubs. It is quite a big job. Usually I just take a section at a time. Every day I just replace just a few, and it takes me, I'd say, about a week to go through and replace everything. I just do a few at a time. Usually on the first of the month I start replacing and then go through my whole collection. So that is pretty much my setup here. So here is my egg incubator that I built out of a beverage cooler. It's been working fantastic. I hatched about 100 hatchlings last year and 100 hatchlings this year. And it is time to shut her down. I can't believe it. Essentially what I did is I just put some heat strips on. You can actually buy this heat tape from Reptile Basics. Get it cut to any length, and actually have some off the shelf heat strip over there. And then I plugged it into a heat controller down here, and I have a little fan down here to circulate the air through here. Have it all plugged in on a power strip, and that's pretty much it. And then I have little temperature probes here and then down on the bottom shelf. And this is kind of what I just added this year. It's a little, it pretty much monitors the temperature. This is magnetic, and it has high and low alarms. This is a lifesaver. Actually, ever since my my temperatures went really low, and I almost lost, I thought for sure I was gonna lose all my eggs in here because the temperature got so cold in there because the fan went out. And it was like really early spring up here in the mountains. It got really cold. And luckily I didn't lose anything, and now I have everything on pretty much temperature controlled and alarms and everything, so I don't have to worry. If the temperature gets too hot or too cold, the alarm goes off, and then I figure out what's going on. All right, so it is time for the question of the day, and Yosef Benya asks, what morphs do you have planned for next year? And that is a very good question. I was looking through my snakes trying to figure out which ones I want to pair up. I have quite a few to choose from, and probably I'm actually looking at some of my holdbacks from last year. I'll give you a sneak peek on just a couple of them. I have one that is a bamboo calico, considering crossing that with a lemon blast. So the crown jewel on that would be the bamboo calico pastel pinstripe, which hopefully I could hit that. And you know, actually the bamboo calico pastels, I produced one last year, just one, and I actually sold it. It was probably the most beautiful snake in my entire collection. On second thought, I probably should have kept that snake, but someone offered me a really good price, and I thought, hey, I'll just make another one. And I actually have a female lined up. One of my lemon blasts has a really bright line of pastel that I'll probably cross with that male. And another project I'm looking at, I'm really looking at getting more into desert ghosts. I really want a few more female visual pastel desert ghosts, and I have one actually that's a pastel spider desert ghost female, and unfortunately I don't think she's going to be ready to breed this fall. I tried to breed her last year, and she's been off food for a long time. Barely got on food. I'm not sure if she's going to be ready in 2 months, so that one I think is going to be a bust. So I'll probably give her the year off. She's a really beautiful snake. And then another one is my clowns. I really want to focus more on my clowns. I actually have 2 clowns that I bought a couple years ago. I've been sitting on the females, and I bought a male this year, and I really want to pair those up. The male is actually a banana inchy clown, and one of the females is a lesser clown. So I'm hoping for the crown jewel, a banana lesser inchy clown, which would be really awesome if I could actually get that combo. That's one I'll definitely hold back. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.